Well, hello, everyone. We're excited to share some information with you regarding getting show ready as it relates to animal health. And we're very excited to have Dr. Angela Lackey with us today. She's an Assistant Executive Director for Animal Health Programs with Texas Animal Health Commission. And she's going to help us get show ready. This is important to us as livestock show exhibitors or anyone related to animal agriculture. And this perfectly aligns with what we're trying to teach through Quality Counts, which is connecting our exhibitors and livestock producers to veterinarians and in the name of animal health. So, as you get ready to get these animals in a trailer and move them about the state and even across state lines, our goal today is to just kind of clear things up a little bit for you as it relates to regulations surrounding animal health. And Dr. Lackey is going to help us do that today. So, Dr. Lackey, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Billy, for the opportunity to participate today. I hope through the next several minutes to help clarify what are the regulations and provide some insight as to why they even exist.
Outstanding. And what I've really appreciated about what y'all have done here, some really straightforward slides. You're going to talk about some additional resources that are available out there. So if you're a county extension agent, an ag science teacher, or an exhibitor, listen in here, and I think you're going to find you're going to have plenty of resources to help you along the way and help you be successful with your livestock projects. So, Dr. Lackey, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, let's start off by answering a basic question of just who is the Animal Health Commission and what is the entire purpose? They were established back in 1893, so over 125 years ago, and they were charged with protecting the state's domestic animals from all contagious or infectious diseases of malignant character. So our language has certainly changed since then, but what remains true is that the TAHC assures livestock and poultry health. They are here to help with disease control and eradication in some cases. Prevent production losses. As we all know in agriculture, productive animals are healthy animals and vice versa. We want to maintain trade avenues and prepare for and respond to animal emergency situations. Today, we're going to cover 4 areas: interstate versus intrastate, certificates of veterinary inspection, official identification, and general exhibition and event reminders. So let's go. Interstate versus intrastate. What is the difference? What is an interstate event? The TAHC considers shows, fairs, rodeos, events, or exhibitions to be interstate if they permit the livestock and poultry from other states to enter Texas for the event, and those animals are in common facilities with Texan origin livestock. Versus intrastate would be all of those similar events, so shows, fairs, rodeos, events, or exhibitions, if only Texas resident animals are participating and they're housed separately from any livestock or poultry that might be from out of state. What do you need to know if you're attending a Texas interstate event? All animals attending must meet the interstate requirements, whether you're from Texas or not. Those requirements are a certificate of veterinary inspection. We also call these health certificates, or CVIs for short. On that, they need an official identification, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. An entry permit, which is obtained from the Texas Animal Health Commission. There may be testing requirements, primarily for breeding animals, or other requirements. And most importantly to remember, if a show includes a sale, all tests must be completed prior to the show and the sale. And again, this primarily applies to breeding animals. What do you need to know if you're going out of state for an interstate event? Again, certificates of veterinary inspection, or CVIs, are required when movement occurs across state lines. An important thing to remember when you're attending intrastate events or interstate events is that the certificate of veterinary inspection is from point A to point B. For example, I'm going to go to the Fort Worth Stock Show and then the San Antonio Stock Show. Do I need one health certificate or two? The answer is I need two. When I'm going to Fort Worth, it's going to be from my home to the Fort Worth Stock Show. Even if I go straight to San Antonio, my certificate of veterinary inspection for San Antonio will be from my home to San Antonio. Let's talk more about certificates of veterinary inspection. A CVI, what's important to know? And what is the purpose? Well, first, they provide the inspection of animals for health concerns prior to movement. We only want to move healthy animals. We don't want to spread disease. That's why a veterinarian is involved on this. Also, it assists to document movement for animal disease traceability. What would happen in the middle of a stock show if foot and mouth disease entered into the United States and it popped up in the same state where we're having all of these fairs and exhibitions? We would certainly want to know an inventory of everyone that attended the show so that we could contact those people and make them aware that foot and mouth disease was in the state. That's exactly what animal disease traceability is. Let's also remember that CVIs are only good for 30 days and they're only for one location. Therefore, we're not going to write a show circuit on there. Also, we're not going to have PO boxes on there. Just remember, the CVI is a tool to help us trace back if there's any disease. So we want to know where that animal resides. And I'm pretty sure it's not at the post office. So make sure that we're putting the physical locations on those certificates of veterinary inspection. The official identification must be identified on the CVI. Additionally, the complete physical locations are also on the CVI. Also, everyone knows where the Houston Livestock Show is. However, it's still important to put that physical address there. The date must be included and it must be accurate. If you're not exactly sure what date you're moving down to Houston, for example, wait a few days until your plans are more firmly detailed and then contact your veterinarian to get that CVI written. And it's really important also not to alter any of the information that is on a CVI. That's illegal. And chances are your veterinarian would be understanding if things change and can issue you a new CVI. So the changes made on a CVI must originate from the veterinarian that issued the CVI. Let's move on to official identification. What is official identification and why is it important? Just like we as humans have social security numbers, official identification is fundamental to traceability in animal disease programs. It's a very unique number that doesn't exist anywhere else for your show animal. Cattle, sheep, goats, and swine and other livestock are subject to official identification requirements. These are outlined both by the USDA and the Texas Animal Health Commission in our regulations. One thing to remember about official identification, it always includes an official U.S. shield and the unique identification number. So if you're ever in doubt, look for that official shield. It's also important to note that it's unlawful for you to remove any form of official identification. Here are some examples of acceptable forms of an official ID. First is the National Uniform Ear Tagging System, or the NUES tags. These are metal tags down in the bottom right-hand corner. They consist of 9 characters. They've been used primarily for cattle, and a prefix number allows you to know the state or the tribe where the animal originated from and was originally tagged. So for example, 74 BC 4275 refers to a Texas animal. 74 is Texas. Next would be the brucellosis vaccination metal or radio frequency identification devices, or RFIDs, pictured there on the bottom middle. They're easy to spot because they're always orange, and the orange denotes that the animal has been vaccinated voluntarily for brucellosis. Also, we have the 840 RFID buttons, and they may be with or without a visual flap, and those are shown on the top right. And again, on every one of these forms of identification, you're able to find the US shield, USDA shield. Here's an example of a downloadable reference sheet that you can find on the Texas Animal Health Commission website. Also, you'll find this in our chat. It's a good handy reference to know which forms of ID are acceptable with which animals. So I encourage you to take a look at it. Unfortunately, at this time, validation tags are not the same thing as official identification. It's something that the Texas Animal Health Commission and AgriLife are working on cooperatively. So remember, even though your animal has a validation tag, they must also have an additional form of official identification. And hopefully next year at this time, we will be able to say that the validation tag is considered official identification, and you can double check us by looking for the USDA shield. Let's move on to general exhibition and event reminders. Please keep in mind, individual shows may have additional requirements. Always check with your show guide to ensure that all requirements are met. And when we're talking about shows, whose responsibility is it at the show to ensure that livestock exhibitions and events are meeting the requirements? It's the show management. However, prior to an exhibition, whose responsibility is it to meet those requirements? It's you, the individual exhibitioners. So it's a shared requirement between the show, the exhibitors, and the Texas Animal Health Commission to ensure that all of the requirements are being met. We want to remind you, start testing animals as early as you can. Don't wait till the last minute, especially if there's any testing to do. It's impossible to predict that your sample will go through the mail or FedEx or UPS or any delivery service and arrive there on time. Things always happen, and they seem to happen when it's show season. So start testing animals as early as you can. Use the correct forms to expedite the process. That's a reminder for your veterinarian that they should enclose a submission form and the specific test that the show requires for you to perform that test. And then we want to remind you, practice good biosecurity, and that's before, during, and after the show. So what can you do before the show? First of all, clean and disinfect your show equipment. You don't want to bring in any visible manure to a show. What can you do at the show? Well, if possible, if your animals are housed beside animals that are not from your facility or across from animals that are not from your facility, try to prevent nose-to-nose contact. That health paper is only valid for one destination for up to 30 days. And it's only valid for one trip to that destination. It is a Class C violation per animal if exhibition and movement requirements are not met in the worst case scenario. Any show animal in Texas that attends a show where out-of-state animals enter, they also must meet those entry requirements that the out-of-state show animals are meeting. So some of those shows would be all of the major shows, for example. A junior show typically includes only intrastate animals. However, if you're also attending the open show, chances are those are all interstate shows and a certificate of veterinary inspection is met. So keep that in mind before you head to the show. Oftentimes, between the junior show and the open show, you still have to move out of the barn. But remember, when you're moving back in for the open show, you're going to need that CVI. And you should have done it before you moved your animal down to that area. A lot of people like to keep their animals in a close location when they move back in for an open show. So in that case, your animal's not going to be back for your veterinarian to write the health certificate. And it's extremely important because this is a validation of a healthy animal that your veterinarian needs to see this animal in person. So always remember to plan ahead, get that CVI before you head to the junior show, especially if you're going to be attending the open show. And with that, I encourage you to look for resources in the chat. We've got a summary of movement requirements for exhibition and event animals, which is kind of a long document. So more importantly, we have a frequently asked questions brochure that you can download, and we also have another bullet point summary of everything that I covered today. So Billy, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you and entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Lackey, and thank you for your detail on working through those slides and helping our folks understand. But as we've been preparing for this, we tried to reach out to our partners and our county extension agents and ag teachers and just kind of field some of their questions. And so we had some real world questions that kind of came in that I'd like you to address. One being our county agents and ag teachers assist with the purchasing and in some cases go with these families out of state to purchase animals. So in this scenario, let's go to Oklahoma and purchase animals that are from out of state and bring them into Texas. What steps need to be taken for those folks to get those animals and stay in compliance and get them to Texas from their original location?
Great question. Number one, plan ahead. Know what the requirements are for Texas. Know what you need to do to bring those animals back home. And remember, you're crossing a state line. There's no big sign necessarily that you're going to see, but you are crossing state lines and you need to keep that as a reminder. At these shows and sales, there may or may not be a veterinarian. So communicate if you're going to a private farm or facility that you will be needing a certificate of veterinary inspection, and make sure that they can provide a recommendation, or better yet, an on-site veterinarian at that event to write the health paper for you.
Okay, outstanding. All right, so Texas, everybody knows livestock showing is huge. It's the biggest in the nation. With that regard, lots of opportunities every weekend to go out, and in some cases, multiple opportunities. So as a family, we're trying to plan out our activities for the next couple weekends, and we can just work with our veterinarian. And let's say we're going to go to 4 different shows over 2 weekends. We can just get our veterinarian to write down all those different locations that we're going to be. So 4 or 5 locations, is that acceptable?
It is acceptable to go to 4 or 5 locations on 4 or 5 health certificates. So each individual location that you're going to would need to be on a separate CVI. And the reasons for that are they go from point A to point B. Remember, it's not going to be acceptable to put the show circuit on your CVI. It's not going to be acceptable to put multiple locations because each CVI or health certificate has a unique number. That unique number is associated with one unique movement from point A to point B. It doesn't allow us to document it's going from point A to point B to point C, back to point B, and then over to point D. We have to keep it very straightforward.
Yes, thank you for clearing up my question. That's exactly what I was asking. There's a misconception out there that, for 30 days, basically, you have the right to take your animal wherever you'd like, and for those 30 days. That's incorrect, isn't it?
That is incorrect. And a way that I think about it is, for example, if your health certificate had multiple different locations on it and something happened and you didn't go to all of those different locations, you may or may not have been exposed to a traceability event that we have to trace back. It's also important to remember if there is a disease outbreak and we need to go and find your show animal, we're not going to find it at the previous show that you attended. We're going to find you at your physical location where your animals are housed and kept. So therefore, point A is your destination or your home base, going to point B, which is the show. And even if you're going from Houston, well, let's back that up. Houston's the last show, unless you're going to Austin. Let's do that. If you're going from Houston to Austin and you're not returning back home, we still want that health certificate written from point A, which is your home, to point B, which is Houston, and then another written from point A, which is your home, to point B, which would be Austin. In the event that you end up not going to Austin, again, we want to know the home base of that animal, and that's the real function of that veterinary health certificate, in addition to a validation that your animal is healthy. And remember, if you're getting these ahead of time, that's acceptable. They are good for up to 30 days for a single movement. But if your animal's health status changes and there might be something different going on from when the veterinarian last saw your animal, it's really important to reach out because your veterinarian said this animal was healthy on this day. We still don't want you to carry a disease into the show just because 14 days ago your veterinarian said your animal was healthy. So make sure that you're continuously communicating with your veterinarian and letting them know if a little bit of ringworm pops up, or if the animal develops a cough, or if they go off feed. You never want to bring a sick animal to a show. Not only do you spread the disease, but you make the illness even worse in your animal. And that's not something good stock show people want to do.
Okay, let's go into show management just a little bit, Dr. Lackey, and Texas obviously shares borders with multiple states, and in so we have these opportunities for out-of-state exhibitors to attend some of our stock shows. So many of our 4-H clubs will do a 4-H fundraiser with a jackpot that's on the border. So if they do allow out-of-state exhibitors to come into their show, I guess I have a two-part question in that: whose responsibility is it to make sure that they're in compliance? Is it on the exhibitor side or show management side? I'm guessing there might be a C, all of the above, but also, and whose responsibility is it to make sure that everyone's in compliance?
Whose responsibility is compliance? I wish I could say it's one person, but perhaps it's better to know that it's a team of people all working together. At the show, it is the management of the show's requirement to ensure that all animals have met the entry requirements. However, prior to that show, it is the exhibitor's responsibility to make sure that they have met all of those requirements. But there's a lot of other people involved in that. It's your parents, it's the AgriLife agents, it's your local veterinarian. All of us have to work together and be aware. So make sure that you do your part and you read what the regulation is. And when you go to your veterinarian, for example, and something is different than what you expect, it's perfectly acceptable to ask the question. Veterinarians are very busy people, and our requirements do change, and they have been confusing, which is why we've got this webinar today to help clarify some of those and make sure that we're all on the same page.
Outstanding. And I know we're going to provide resources and fact sheets, but if there is a county extension agent or an ag science teacher or a family out there that really wants to get somebody on their phone to talk through this, can you direct them to where you would recommend them going to get somebody on the phone to talk through their specific situation?
Absolutely. In the materials that we have on the chat are phone numbers for the Texas Animal Health Commission. Also, there are 6 different region offices throughout Texas, and everyone has a local extension office as well. All of those are great resources to get your questions answered.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Lackey, I've worked through my list. Is there something that you wish I would have asked you today?
Yes, I want to make sure that everybody has a lot of fun. I know that meeting requirements and regulations sometimes can be a little bit frustrating, but remember, The Texas Animal Health Commission is here to help protect the livestock in Texas from diseases, protecting our trade, making sure that if a disease comes in that we can notify you and make you aware. So keeping that in mind, they are necessary regulations. And if we all work together, we can still have a good time at the shows and not make those regulations burdensome. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity to provide some clarification and explanation today. Thank you, Billy.
Well, thank you for your time, Dr. Lackey, and thanks for reintroducing the idea of fun and education, and that's why we're all here. So, you know, in 4-H and livestock exhibitors, 4-H and FFA livestock exhibitors, we're definitely part of animal agriculture, and we want to do our part to make sure we're in compliance. So thank you again so much for your time.
You're welcome.